It's showtime, folks. Enjoy the show.
And it's a fine Saturday matinee. How are you, Steve?
Good. I was going to say Happy New Year, but I realized I talked with you what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago for our Molly's game. I thought, I haven't been on here in a month. I better say Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah, right. Well, for the matinee, it's been a while, but
yes, it has. Yeah.
As long as people are tuning in to the other shows, then they will have heard your lovely voice.
Plus, you always say good morning, and then I say good morning, and then you stole my line. So I got to.
This is, of course, our Saturday matinee. It's our show for our Patreon subscribers. Thank you all for supporting us. We're glad you are out there. And this is, I think Steve and I are just going to have a nice little chat about a few different things this morning. Plus, we've got our trailers and our lists. So I'm really curious about the fire sale list and what you came up with, because this was a terrible, terrible list for me. I really struggled. It didn't help that our government is currently going through a shutdown. So when you search for government shutdown, it's just all news.
Yeah, well, it's the timely list. It's the list of, you guys were had a premonition about the shutdown. I think you guys several months ago when you scheduled everything out, you knew that whole Live Free or Die Hard episode was going to fall right around the time of a government shutdown. It's just eerie.
Well, anyway, let's start. Have you seen any good movies lately? How's your movie life been?
Oh, it's been a little slow after the holidays. I'm trying to ramp up for, Oscar season, but I was fortunate to catch quite a few in the fall. I did get to see The Shape of Water.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen that one
last weekend. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's a nice little sort of Cold War era fairy tale. And I was pleasantly surprised with that. I really enjoyed it. I thought maybe it was going to be a little more style over substance, but no, my wife and I really enjoyed that one. So it's definitely one. I don't know that a genre film like that is going to get a lot of attention in the Oscars. But it's definitely one that I think people should make time for. Something a little different.
It's gotten quite a bit of attention already. I was surprised that it got so much attention at the Golden Globes, and Guillermo del Toro walked away with the best director. So it's interesting. I'm really curious to see if it what is going to happen with that as far as the Oscars. Because I know seems to be like one of his next to Pan's Labyrinth, kind of his kind of higher ranking films.
Yeah, and the thing is, I saw Pan's Labyrinth. Well, I've seen it once, and I didn't love it. It was one where I thought I just didn't really connect with the story or what he was maybe trying to say with that one, and so that's why I was a little cautiously optimistic about this one. I thought, well, it looks like you got a good cast and an interesting story, and it did. The story came together to be really enjoyable for me. So I was pleasantly surprised. So yes,
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I got to sneak out to see that one.
Yeah. What about you? What have you usually booked? I mean, you're in the Blot Nelson zone with just other stuff. But I think you sound like you're over your cold. So I'm assuming you're getting out there trying to load up on your Oscar contenders.
I haven't been. My cold has been just still killing me. I actually was just back at the doctor's this past week to have x-rays of my sinus cavities and everything, trying to figure out what's happening with me. But so it's, last weekend my wife and I were talking about getting a babysitter to go see something, but I was just like, I don't feel like it. So it's just been laying around watching movies. But it's been good. I've been playing catch up on a lot of stuff that I've missed. So in fact, I just finally got myself prepped for the new trailer rewind that's hitting this week with Burnt. So I'm very excited to hear you and JJ's take on that one.
Well, I saw there in Slack your little letterboxed review. So
I really enjoyed it. So I was really surprised because I didn't think it looked that good, and the reviews I don't recall being that great, but it just hit me right. So I'm curious to see what you guys think.
Yeah, but we had a really fun conversation about that one. I feel good that we're starting this year off not scaring the pants off of JJ. So I'm trying to take that into consideration as we work our way through our trailer rewind in the first part of this year.
You'll note I've been picking a lot of horror trailers lately. I'm trying to whittle down the number of options that you guys have.
That's why I'm here, to balance things out.
That's right.
And so as I was looking for my trailer, I was shocked to see that like we're in this deluge of like, let's redo every movie from the 80s. And
I know.
At first it was, I started watching this trailer because it was like for Heathers. And I thought, they're going to do a reboot of the movie. No, it's a TV series and they've totally just turned it into something else. I'm so upset because to me, that's one of those classics. You know, I was in high school when that came out. It was like one of those really fringe, outsidery high school movies that I really connected with. So I have a little special space in my heart for that film, you know, Christian Slater and Winona Ryder at that time. And they just turned it into something completely different that to me, it's almost like a parody of what I think Heathers is about. So I was upset with that. And then,
well, I just a quick note on that. Yeah. I don't know if I completely agree with you. I think that is one that is, it was so perfectly designed for like 1988. It fits so well with the time. I think that it's an interesting story. And I think the trailer, it could turn into something that works really well for like modern audiences. So I'm curious to see how that one plays out.
I guess. Kids these days. But then it was, as I was looking for trailers, then there was like this Crocodile Dundee thing, and then they're redoing Overboard. And the thing is, none of them, it's not like they're going to just remake it. It's like they're going to take that title and then they're going to just run with it in a complete, here's the concept. It's sort of the seed, but they're doing something completely different. So it's just basically leveraging that intellectual property because audiences are like, oh yeah, I remember that. I'll go see this. Overboard, like they did a whole gender swap thing where Anna Faris sort of has the Kurt Russell role, and then Dundee is like, oh, it's his son, but it's like he's nothing like his dad. He's like some city kid, from what I've read. I thought,
and it's Danny McBride too. Is he playing Australian, or is he like supposed to be like the American son that he had with the lady?
I don't, and it's like, well, if you're going to redo it, just redo it or tell a different story. I guess this sort of ties into the discussion you guys have been having with Die Hard, where it's like, oh, here's this script that has this concept, but let's make it a Die Hard thing. And I feel like there's these scripts out there where it's like, oh, this is a clever idea. It's not strong enough to stand on its own. So we'll just like call it Overboard, or we'll call it Dundee because it's a fish out of water, but you know, who's going to go see this unknown thing? Let's tag something familiar to it.
Yeah, I haven't looked to see if any of these are in that camp, but it is really curious that this is something that the studio corporations feel is bankable right now, taking these existing properties that were a success and redoing them to tap into kind of that 80s nostalgia that our age group who grew up in the 80s has, in the hopes that we all go see them. Because I mean, it's a huge list. I was looking around online for movies from the 80s that are getting remade right now, or at least are getting having talks about it. I mean, aside from the ones you mentioned, let me just read down this list here. Akira, the animated film, it was Jordan Peele was offered to direct it, but he turned it down, and now Taika Waititi is actually slated to direct the live action version of that.
Oh my!
Very curious.
Yeah.
Alien Nation with Jeff Nichols attached to direct. An American Werewolf in London, which I've heard that floating around with Max Landis actually attached to redirect his dad's project, which I think is. I don't know how to feel about that one. Because, well, aside from the fact that John Landis has said he thinks that a remake is a terrible idea, and then all of a sudden his son is the one who's doing it. Like, okay. Let's see. Then we have Big Trouble in Little China. They've been talking about doing that with Dwayne Johnson, which that's one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. I'm just like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Not to mention Escape from New York, which Robert Rodriguez is directing. And that's when Pete and I actually, when we talked about that movie, we're like, that actually warrants a remake if somebody's going to do it right. And I don't know if Robert Rodriguez is the guy. I guess we'll find out. One of my favorite 80s comedies is Clue, and they're actually talking about remaking that one, which is strange to me because the first one, it wasn't a success, but it's certainly become kind of a cult classic. So.
Right. Yeah.
Your favorite person, Akiva Goldsman, is slated to direct a remake of Stephen King's Firestarter.
Oh my. Okay.
Yeah. Chris Addison is already directing the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels remake, which is now called Nasty Women, with Anne Hathaway, Rebel Wilson, and Ingrid Oliver. Flash Gordon, Matthew Vaughn, I guess, is going to direct that, written by Mark Protosevich. I can't remember how to say his name. Flight of the Navigator, the Henson Company is talking about doing a remake of that. Highlander, directed by Chad Stahelski, who did John Wick. Masters of the Universe, of all things, which right now has a 2019 release date. McGee was slated to direct that, which he isn't anymore. I don't know who's on for that one. A Nightmare on Elm Street, which they just remade, and now they're talking about remaking it again. And now they're saying that Kevin Bacon might actually play Freddy Krueger, which I guess Robert Englund is like, that's a great idea. So, no idea. No idea what to make of that one.
Oh my gosh.
The Scarface remake, which is, I guess it's a remake because it was the 83 Al Pacino movie was already a remake, but here we are with another remake, which I guess, I was thinking about this one. I'm like, at least the thing with that one is they're casting somebody who's Hispanic to play the role as opposed to Al Pacino, because they have Diego Luna slated to play the title character. And actually, what I remember reading is that I think, because the director, I think, dropped out, and I heard that Diego Luna was actually in talks to actually take over as director too. So
interesting.
I don't know where that's going to end up landing. This was funny, especially considering our conversation we just had with the Shape of Water. They're remaking Splash, which I always kind of thought Shape of Water looked kind of like a Splash remake anyway. Now here they are looking at doing a Splash remake with Channing Tatum. Again, the gender swap thing. Just Channing Tatum as the merman.
Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Kevin Hart is looking to be in the remake of The Great Outdoors, which, that was a great 80s comedy I really enjoyed. And then Terms of Endearment, of all things. Lee Daniels is in talks to redirect that with Oprah playing the Shirley MacLaine role. So
okay, yeah, it's just. I mean, these just seem like hey, let's just throw this, see if it sticks. Some of these just what? I mean, there's some interesting. I have to say, doing Highlander again, and somebody from that responsible for bringing us John Wick, I can see that in terms of let's take something, let's really ramp up the action and the stunts and the sword play and that. I can see that. But The Great Outdoors, I mean, it's Kevin Hart. Yes, he can do comedy. So
yeah, why not just make a Kevin Hart outdoors comedy?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well, in terms of endearment, that one really surprised me. It's like, what is Gandhi coming next? Like, out of Africa? Like, why are they remaking these things?
I don't know. Well, I guess Oprah just better get that done, and out there before she decides to run for president. So
yeah, she doesn't have that much time.
Yeah. But that's a lot. And I guess I don't know what the actual status is of a lot of these, if some of them are sort of just in development and some of them sounds like, some are shooting, the first couple we mentioned there's trailers, but you said like the Nasty Woman is already in, production. And so it'll be interesting to see which of these actually sort of make it through to release, and then ultimately what happens with the quality of these films.
How well they fare.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Wow.
It makes me wonder, like back in the 80s, were there that many remakes of things from like I guess it would be the 50s?
No,
I don't know if that it wasn't really that big of a thing. So the remake world has really kind of been growing, I think, since then, as kind of our age group has been aging.
It's like we don't like fresh ideas. I mean, this just makes me feel horrible. Like we're this disgruntled, angry generation. Aging Gen Xers just want to revisit their youth. Let's repackage it because that'll make them happy. I'm like, no. There's so many great original stories. Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh. There were so many this past year, and there's more coming. Oh yeah. That's why I'm hoping this just filters down. Maybe only like 3 of these make it through because right.
Yes. Well, we already know Overboard is hitting soon, and I'm not super excited about that one.
No.
Oh, well. And it's funny because let's just jump into our trailers, and I'll let you go first. Because
speaking of, yes, I know. Guilty.
I saw your trailer and I'm like, well, Steve is like right up the alley here. So
Yes.
I'll let you take it over.
Well, okay. So, okay. Well, the great thing about the 80s is we had so many of those great, like, direct to video films you could discover on cable TV or at Blockbuster. And that's where Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think, made his career, like Bloodsport and then Kickboxer. So when I saw that there was a movie called Kickboxer Retaliation, and what really grabbed my eye about this, and I think brilliant marketing, was they're now doing on YouTube, you'll have the trailer, but you have a little like intro teaser segment, and it's a clip from the movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme fighting Mike Tyson, who they are both in this movie. And so that caught my eye of like, wow, both these guys are in this movie. Then I get the trailer and realize, okay, these two are like minor characters, like the coach and for the guy. But I'm interested in going back to the world of Kickboxer. And what I did not know is that this is like a whole like franchise reboot. This is the second in a possible trilogy. I did not know that there was a Kickboxer Vengeance in 2016, which had Jean-Claude Van Damme, but also Dave Bautista. So I'm kind of intrigued in going back to visit that one. And what I really liked about the trailer, why I picked this one, is it really feels like they're going back to that straight to DVD, straight to video feel, where it's like you have a story. It's simple. There's not a ton of like CG stuff. You know, we're not like in science fiction land. It's just like a simple sort of small scale movie. You're fortunate enough to have a couple recognizable names. Christopher Lambert is also in this. I thought, okay, here's some names that'll get me to sit down and watch this. The main character is played by a gentleman, Alan Musai. He's best known as like a martial artist and stuntman, which I thought, okay, you've cast somebody for his skills. His acting may not be great, but I'm willing to sit through that if there's some really cool fight scenes. And from looking at the trailer, they're going all out. The big bad in this one is this huge guy who's like the strongest man on earth. I thought that's what I want. It's ridiculous. It's fun, and it harkens back to that era. And yes, I'm guilty of playing along with what they want, but at least I could say they're not, by calling it Kickboxer, Retaliation. I thought, okay, it's its own story. We're not actually getting a retread of the same thing. And yes, they're cashing in on that, but at least I get to see Jean-Claude Van Damme. I'm thrilled to see his career having a resurgence where he does not take himself too seriously.
Yeah, I've never seen a Kickboxer movie. I know the first one spawned like 4 sequels, and now there's this new trilogy. It's funny. It's just one of those things that it was never on my radar. Like I didn't even know that Kickboxer was a thing as a movie until like several years later, and some people were watching it in college in the dorms or something, and I was like, "What is this movie?" And it just turned into this whole thing, and I just like I've missed that entire thing. So
no, you do a Van Damme trilogy. You do. Here's a series for you and Pete. You do Bloodsport, Kickboxer, and Cyborg. You get your Van Damme trilogy right there. I mean, the big thing with Kickboxer that I think most people remember is they get their hands bound in like wrapped, and then they roll them in like glass. So it's not only are they punching each other, they're punching each other with like these improvised boxing gloves that are covered with shards of broken glass. So it's serious, dirty street fighting in this arena in some unknown city in the East. So yeah, you got to check it out. This is going, I was excited. I was like, oh, this will be fun to see on the big screen. Oh, no, it's a straight to DVD Blu-ray release. So anybody that is interested could check that out on January 26th of this month.
Yeah, it's funny. Jean-Claude Van Damme is one of those actors where I like missed like a lot of stuff from his career. I saw some of it, like what was the one? Was it Universal Soldier where it's no?
Yeah. Was that's the one with him and Dolph Lundgren.
Yeah, and it's just like I come in peace and you go in pieces or whatever. It's like I saw that one. I saw like Time Cop.
Right. Yeah.
That maybe that's it. I can't remember if I've seen that many of his films. And then kind of some of the resurgent stuff that he was in. Like he was in what's the old men? All the old men fighting.
Oh, Expendables.
Expendables, yeah. I saw that one. So it's, you know, he's one of those guys who I think is kind of fun to watch because he just makes such strange movies, and he's one of those interesting action guys. But I've just never been that big of a Jean-Claude guy. So
oh my gosh, if you start in 1988 over what a 5-year span, you've got Bloodsport, Black Eagle, Cyborg, Kickboxer, Lionheart, Death Warrant, Double Impact, Universal Soldier, Nowhere to Run, Last Action Hero, Hard Target, Time Cop, Street Fighter. That's just from 88 to 94.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend Bloodsport, Cyborg, Kickboxer, Hard Target. That's John Woo, actually. That one is is definitely worth putting on the list. So I'm gonna make you and Pete do a
it's gonna
Jean-Claude Van Damme series. It's gotta happen. It's just
these days.
I think you need a breather from the Die Hard. You take a little break from that, but
I don't know if Jean-Claude Van Damme is the break we need, but yes. Well, my trailer this week is, I really was not excited about watching this trailer because I don't know, the image that they use as the thumbnail looked really dumb with Katie Holmes in it. But I watched the trailer and I'm like, it actually is kind of funny, but I also felt like they pretty much gave me the entire film in the trailer. It's the new film Dear Dictator, written and directed by Lisa Addario and Joe Syracuse. And it's about this angsty high school girl played by Odeya Rush, who, nobody gets her. She's got all these bullies at school, and just, her mom she hates her mom. Her mom's having this affair with her pediatrician or whatever it is. I can't remember. And she's just like, she's miserable. And so this class assignment that Jason Biggs, her social studies teacher, tells the class to do, they have to write a letter to somebody that inspires them. And so she writes to this communist dictator in like this fictional Caribbean country. And who's played by Michael Caine, which largely is the reason I picked this trailer, who plays General Anton Vincent. And he's this dictator of this country, and he there's a coup or something, and so he flees, and he ends up going to this girl because the letters that they've been writing back and forth, it really has helped, they've built this relationship and all this. And it's just like this communist dictator kind of in her life, and teaching her to kind of be a rebel and, get back at the people who are causing her issues and everything. It looks really silly. Like I said, the trailer pretty much gives everything away, but Michael Caine as the communist dictator made me laugh quite a bit. Odeya Rush, I thought, caught that angsty high school bit quite a bit. And Katie Holmes as her mom, she's fine. Seth Green, Jason Biggs pop up in it. So, I can't say it's something I'm going to see, but I did laugh at the trailer. So anyway, that's what I have. Dear Dictator.
No, that's sort of the perfect trailer rewind pick. It's something that is probably going to get forgotten, and it might be something worth discovering, because you have to think, all right, this might be the film that just everybody's doing it for the paycheck. What is there? But there might be something that we find in this story about, being a teenager and being a rebel, and to take advice from a dictator, is again that whole high school as sort of society is, does it take a dictator to really,
right,
make change? What is a true rebel like in high school? Yeah, I'm like, why is Michael Caine in this? There's got to be something. It looks ridiculous, but yeah, you know what you're in for with this. And I just thought the fact there's that many names, there's got to be some. It's got to at least be funny. There's got to be some humor to bring all these actors to this. Katie Holmes, Jason Biggs. I'm curious. Not something I'm gonna head out to the theater to see, but definitely something when it's available streaming. I'll make time for it one late Friday or Saturday night to just check it out.
What's interesting about this is it doesn't say this on IMDb, but there is a South Korean film called Dear Dictator that came out in 2014. And it doesn't sound like, looking at it actually, now that I read the synopsis on Wikipedia, it doesn't sound like the same sort of film, but it did make me wonder. I'm like, I wonder if they somehow got the idea for this from that film, but Who knows? Anyway, this film, it looks like it's going to have a theatrical release here in the States March 16th. So that's the only release it has as of yet. So anyway, Dear Dictator. As Pete and I foolishly decided last week, we talked about Live Free or Die Hard on the show this week. And we're like, hey, let's do movies with fire sales, which is, the big, the whole country gets shut down. Kind of that's what we picked as our list. So, man, this was a tricky one. I really struggled trying to come up with things. So I think I'm going to be stretching it quite a bit on this.
Okay. I found a couple that I think are pretty close to solid. I've got one that I'll go 50-50. I think half I may be stretching it, and I think I did find a couple that are in the spirit of what we're going for, which I think in general we have to do with these lists because, this is such a specific topic and plot point that, it was a real challenge for me to try and find something searching online and how to construct a search to find something like that. And then just racking my brain of, okay, when do I remember seeing something like that? But I came up with, I've got 3 and an alternate. I have one alternate in case you steal one of mine. So we'll see how identical our lists are.
Well, I'll let you kick it off. So go for it.
Okay. So this is the first one that came to mind, and this is 2005's V for Vendetta, which is based on the graphic novel, which I much prefer to the film, but it's the whole idea of, sort of an anarchist force there to basically shut down the government, restore power to the people in this sort of fascist state. And so that was the closest, I think, off the top of my head connection. This is the one with, Hugo Weaving, Natalie Portman, shaved her head for this movie. It's not a great film. I haven't seen it in a long time. I consider revisiting it, bringing it back up on this list. I'm like, I might find time in the next week or two to see how well this one holds up. But that's my first pick, V for Vendetta. Let's have a sinister plot to blow up Parliament and take out the government.
Nice. I like that one. That's a great one. Well, I'm gonna start right away with I think they're all gonna be stretches for me, but my first one is it's a film from 1983 that I think is it's a great film, at least in my memory of it. I haven't watched it in quite a while, but I loved it at the time, and I watched it tons of times. And this one, it's really kind of, I guess you could say, not quite a government shutdown, but it's an accidental hacker potentially destroying the world, which I felt like it could be. I guess you could call that a government shutdown. It's John Badham's War Games from 1983. Matthew Broderick is this hacker who accidentally hacks into this supercomputer that is going to predict outcomes for nuclear war and pretty much starts World War III accidentally. And, I don't know if it technically is a government shutdown, but it does involve a hacker getting into the government computers and screwing everything up. So it's like, it's kind of close. I think I'll go with it. I think that it's... man, did I love that film at the time. And it's one that I really would love to revisit, but I'm also slightly afraid to revisit it because I'm afraid I'm going to be really disappointed. But I sure loved it at the time. And that's my first choice, War Games.
Oh, I want to say I watched that with the kids a couple of years ago. It still holds up.
Does it really?
It's still, as I recall, it still holds up pretty well. I mean, there's the technology's outdated and old, sure, and all of that. But I think, in terms of the plot points, specifically the way the story beats and all of that, it moves along pretty well. You've got Ali Sheedy and Matthew Broderick that, really, carry the film as, sort of the couple on the run. So yeah, I'd definitely say it's definitely worth checking out. If you haven't seen it in a long time, I'd say, yeah, revisit.
And John Wood is Dr. Falcon. There's something about like that character that just I always loved as a kid, and Barry Corbin as the general.
Oh yes,
those two characters were so burned in my head as different spectrums of authority figures that always stuck with me. So
yeah, no, I would say that's not too much of a stretch because you've got a computer sort of superseding the government to try to do what it thinks is best to win the game. So yeah, the government sort of falls by the wayside, or we're facing imminent destruction. Okay,
then I'll take it.
You can take that. Yes.
All right, what's your next choice?
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna go with my stretch here, because I want you to be aware of this film to maybe encourage you to check it out. Because my alternate, I think you've probably seen and did not enjoy. I want to bring something new to the table. This is a Spanish film called The Last Days, and this is my stretch because it sort of starts to get into that dystopia place, but it's a mysterious epidemic spreads across the planet, and humanity develops an irrational fear of open spaces because if you go outside, you die within seconds. And so the entire populace is trapped inside buildings, and basically society crumbles. And the guy is on a quest to get to his missing girlfriend, and he can't get outside. So he's got to travel through subway tunnels and sewer systems. And as he does this, he's encountering different groups that have sort of created their own societies now that sort of the entire system has broken down. So plague causes, government failure and shutdown. What is the world like, and how do we, it's sort of a commentary on, what happens when our systems fail, and what does that do to people. So it's a bit of a stretch, but it's the idea of a story where the government disappears. And I didn't want to get to dystopia where we're way past this. This is sort of like the day after the system fails, what happens to us.
That sounds like a really interesting film, and I feel like I've heard of it before, but it's not something that's been on my radar. So I'm going to have to put that one on my radar again, because it's one of those ones that it came out, how many years ago? About 5 years ago or something?
Yeah, it was 2013. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I caught it on Netflix. Actually, my wife caught it on Netflix and said, "You have to see this movie." I was like, okay. And yeah, it was one of those films that just really surprised me, because I thought, it's going to be one of these, cheesy sci-fi concepts that's, sort of a middling execution of how well this gets pulled off. And is it a story I've seen before? But there was just something really fresh about it. And it's, to me, like I said, it's the idea of we're not at full dystopia yet, but we're seeing how we get there.
That sounds, it sounds like a great one. So I'm going to have to check that one out for sure. For my next choice, I'm going with one that you don't actually see the government collapse, but it's tricky, because I was like looking at some, I'm like, well, they're falling into kind of that dystopian future where the government's already shut down. But this one I put on my list because you do kind of see what's left of the government. This is 500 years later. It's not the greatest film, but it did have a few laughs. It's Mike Judge's 2006 film Idiocracy.
Yes.
The premise, I think, is just fantastic. Luke Wilson goes into this human hibernation experiment that goes awry, and his sleep pod gets something happens, I can't remember exactly, and he ends up waking up 500 years later. The whole, our whole world's basically been collapsed, and now it's just being run by these idiots. And it's really, some of the stuff in it I think is really prescient, and some of it is just so just spot on perfect. There's a lot of the comedy that I think doesn't work for me, but on the whole, I think it's a pretty clever film that certainly had a few laughs for me. And, President Camacho is running the place at the time, played by Terry Crews. His name is President Dwayne Elizondo Mountain Dew Herbert Camacho, or whatever. And so some good stuff in this one. So that's my second one, Idiocracy.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where, yes, poor decision making on our part leads us to a government that really has failed in its function. It's one that's gotten a lot of attention in the past couple of years. So people revisiting this of like what's going on politically in our country, and are we heading towards idiocracy? It's one I enjoyed. I think there was a lot of hype about it. Or, here's Mike Judge bringing us a movie that, after the success of, Beavis and Butthead and Office Space and all of that. And I think there was just a lot of really heightened expectations, and it couldn't live up to. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a fun one.
It's a struggle I have with his style anyway. Like I feel like there's really low bar comedy paired with some fairly smart ideas, and I feel like it never quite gels in any of his projects. But I appreciate that he's trying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah. All right. What's your number one?
So this is the first thing that came to mind when you told me this, and It's from 1996, written and directed by David Koepp. This is starring Kyle MacLachlan, Elizabeth Shue, Dermot Mulroney, Michael Rooker. The Trigger Effect.
Huh.
Seen it? No?
I feel like I have.
This is where
I can't remember anything about it.
We're sort of in a smallish town, and a blackout leaves everyone, in the dark, literally and sort of figuratively, because this is, pre-internet. So blackout, and basically people are left to decide what is legal, what's questionable in order to survive in a predatory environment, is how IMDb describes it. So it's, if our infrastructure fails us, people sort of go Lord of the Flies on each other.
Right.
And so it's really about people making those choices to decide to not abide by whatever rules or morals. If the power, and it's really interesting of how it's set up. It's just basically a power outage, and how we rely so much on that for so much, particularly in the 90s. You've got everything, electric, communication. Your power goes out, boom, you don't have phone service. Here it's like you can have a blackout, and you still got your your phone, as long as the satellite's going and you got a signal and tower, however far away you could get there. Here it's like no pure communication blackout, no power. It's like going back to pioneer days where what is justice, and it's what the people decide. So that's the first one that came to mind when I talk about everything must go when our infrastructure fails us. The Trigger Effect.
That's a fantastic choice. I worked on a project, and I suppose I could use this as an alternate. I actually worked on a National Geographic project that was kind of a, one of those, what if scenario sorts of films where it's like, what if all of this stuff happens? Basically, a fire sale happens. It was called American Blackout. And that's basically like watching people devolve, like society collapses as all this stuff happens. It's a really interesting premise, and actually, I thought it ended up turning out okay. I didn't want to use it as my final pick just because it's something I worked on, but it is kind of, I guess, my bonus. The one I went with, I was really struggling because a lot of the ones I kept coming up with were ones where it's like, okay, it's more of that dystopian future, or it's a future where the government has kind of corrupted to a point where, like, awful things are, they're making awful things happen, like the Hunger Games or Battle Royale types of movies.
Yeah.
Or, something like a big, who knows sort of thing kills half the population. And I was like, it doesn't really count. So I went with one that I think kind of counts because I guess you could call it kind of it's not really a fire sale. It's not really a government shutdown, but it certainly is our government in the process, and our society in the process of getting taken over by outside forces. Which I think kind of works for the idea. And it's the brilliant 1988 John Carpenter movie, They Live.
Ah, okay.
And I think it's a really interesting one because it's this alien species that is really kind of they're disguising themselves as us, and they're manipulating our society to spend more money, to watch more TV, to breed, to accept the status quo, and it's just like this brainwashing. And I thought, especially in the Reagan era, it was a really interesting movie that kind of pushed for that idea of, we're just, our minds are going numb with the media and everything, and we're not paying attention to like the more important things. And it was an interesting way to kind of, play that out, and using an alien species that's kind of trying to, take us over. And so I thought that was kind of, a little bit of a stretch, but I still thought it could potentially work as a fire sale or a government, maybe not shutdown, but take over. So that's my final choice. They Live.
That was one that ran across my radar. I was trying to think of when we sort of have systemic failure or a hostile takeover of our government. So that was one that and if you haven't, if anybody hasn't seen it, go check it out. It is a really entertaining film. As with a lot of John Carpenter, there's some parts where I'm like, okay, I wish we could, go back and sort of just do a little tweaking to it to make it like this great classic that I have no quibbles with. But I mean, there's so many great iconic moments. There's the brutal fist fight in the alley that lasts like 8 minutes. There's, Roddy Piper, walking in, I've come, what is it? I've got 2 things to do, to chew gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of gum.
Right.
Just such, oh yeah. No, I'll give you that one just because it's an awesome film. My one alternate, because I was surprised that we didn't have any overlap on this list. My one alternate was 2008's Eagle Eye. The one
that was right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause it's like the computer is sort of orchestrating events to sort of eliminate the executive branch. And I thought it's sort of, but I sort of found myself in the same spot you did of it's really hard to find that government shutdown fire sale where it's sort of like in process versus, there's tons of dystopia where we see the after effects, but and maybe that's a hint to Hollywood. Instead of redoing all these 80s films, show us something about, government starting to fail or an aggressive attempt to disassemble that, because I think, it was one part of Live Free or Die Hard that I appreciated because it was a different approach to that type of, Die Hard movie. And I think it's an interesting subject that I'd like to see more people take on.
So what are we going to do for our list next week? So we're finishing the Die Hard series with A Good Day to Die Hard,
which I haven't seen. I have not.
Well, it's John and his son. He's his estranged son. So we've got estranged family members. We've got trips to Russia. We've got nuclear. Preventing nuclear war. Those are some options that we have. Final franchise movies.
Final franchise, or is it?
Or is it, right? Exactly.
Okay. Estranged. Oh, because I feel like now this is where we start to get into, if it's trips to Russia and nuclear war, it's like, okay, we're gonna end up just doing a James Bond list. The estranged son thing. Maybe. I mean, I guess I don't know how key that is to the main thrust of the story.
I mean, it's he and his son aren't talking, and his son gets in trouble in Moscow, and he's got to go try to save him. But really, there's more going on. But then he and his son have to go on this massive, quest at that point. And as they go on the quest, it's also time to heal.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we could do that because that's. If you've got the sort of a strange family that sort of like reconnects under sort of different circumstances.
under difficult circumstances.
Because it's got to be something more than just like, family got together for Thanksgiving and our estranged son is coming. It's going to be family drama. But something where it's sort of a character piece, but we've got larger issues at stake. So he's got to save the world and save his relationship.
Okay. Exactly. I love it. Let's do that.
Okay, and then I'll just make sure it's you and Pete that have to deal with this nightmare, not me.
Oh, thanks.
No, this will be interesting.
It'll be easier to search for than government shutdown.
Yes, that will. Most definitely.
All right. Well, fantastic talking with you, Steve.
Yeah, always a pleasure getting up early on Saturday, talk about movies.
Yes, it's a wonderful thing. And as we said on the show, there will be a new Trailer Rewind hitting this week. So check that out. If you're one of our Patreon subscribers, you may already have the preview version in your feed, so you can tune in already. And other than that, I guess that's it. We're going to finish our Die Hard series this week, and then we're kicking off musicals from the 60s. So looking forward to jumping into some of those and seeing what sort of lists we end up forming.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. From those movies. It should be fun. All right. Well, again, Patreon subscribers, thank you so much for supporting us over on Patreon. We really appreciate you. And I guess that's it. So have a great Saturday, everybody.
Have a great Saturday. And hey, Andy, you know what?
What's that?
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.